discussion is Gold is the Way Forward as the main vehicle for publishing research. So without further delay, I would like to invite Mr. Stephen Inchcombe, who is the Chief Publishing and Solutions Officer for Springer Nature, to moderate this panel discussion. Welcome, Stephen, and over to you.
Good day, everybody. Thank you very much. Our panel today is going to explore how gold is the way forward as the main vehicle for publishing research. I'll explain a little bit while the panelists join us. My name is Stephen Inchcombe. I'm the Chief Publishing Officer at Springer Nature. My responsibilities cover research, publishing, and all of our editorial activities and our services to authors, peer reviewers, and editors and society partners, including, critically, our transition to open access. Prior to that, I was at the Financial Times and PricewaterhouseCoopers, and originally I was a physicist at Oxford. It is generally accepted that open access approaches benefit the whole of the scientific and research community, progress, increasing collaboration, and in turn helping to solve real-world problems, fostering economic growth and increasing the public's appreciation of research. Today we're joined by a distinguished panel, who's now all here, thank you, to explore how we can achieve this. Can I just begin by introducing my panelists? To begin with, Sarah Bossard is currently head of open access journals at the Royal Society of Chemistry, where she's responsible for driving the growth of open access across the organisation and positioning the RSC as a proactive contributor to the wider open science movement. Prior to that, she was at the International Water Association, where she moved all of their journals to open access, and she began her career at Frontiers, where she launched a suite of open access journals and led the expansion of Frontiers into the UK. I'm also joined by Dr. Partha Chakraborty. Partha did his PhD at the University of Delaware and returned to India in 1993. And since then, he's been at the Indian Institute, Institute of Technology at Kanpur, and for most of that time he's been there, as well as being a visiting faculty at the University of Delaware. He's received many awards for excellence in teaching and in recognition of his research, including awards from the American Society of Civil Engineers and the World Conference for Transport Research. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Ren Shengali. After 2 years as a postdoctoral fellowship in the China University of Geosciences, Dr. Ren became a science editor in 1997. He's authored or co-authored more than 80 papers about science editing and publishing in peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Ren also serves as the Vice President of the China Editology Society for Science Periodicals, and also Deputy Chief Editor of Learned Publishing, Chinese Journal of Scientific and Technical Periodicals, and Acta Editologica, and he's based in Beijing. Welcome, Shengli. And lastly but not least, Dr. Jopal Krishna Joshi. Dr. Jopal Krishna is the Executive Director of the Kanaka State Higher Education Council in India. He's presently involved in the implementation of the National Education Policy in the higher education space in the state of Karnataka. Well, what am I doing this morning? Karnataka. Dr. Jopal is an experienced professor with a demonstrated history of working in higher education, particularly engineering education. He's also known for his leadership and innovation in engineering education. Dr. Jopal originally did his PhD in computer science at the JNTU in Hyderabad. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'd like to begin with a question for you, Sarah. Researchers are often not clear how open access benefits their research and in turn future research. What do you see as the key benefits and what resources are available to researchers to understand this?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Can everyone hear me? All right. Yes, okay, great. Yeah, thanks for inviting me today. I'm really looking forward to speaking with all of you, hearing about your different points of view, and also, of course, speaking about open access. Really, there's so many advantages to open access that we could fill a whole session just on that. So I'm going to focus on really what I view as the main points. And I think these tie into really what's at the core of the open access movement, which is granting seamless, unrestricted access to research outputs so that everyone everywhere has the same potential to read and then to build upon them. And it's really through the digitization of research outputs in the last few years, well, decades more, that an unprecedented opportunity was created for anyone with a computer and the internet to access published research. With subscriptions, however, there's still one final barrier to access, which is the paywall, and open access really seeks to remove this final barrier to give individuals, regardless of where they work or what they do, access to knowledge. And of course, there are some great examples where this is particularly advantageous. Of course, the most obvious is the recent COVID pandemic. Publishers globally made almost all relevant COVID-related research open access, which allowed for an unprecedented acceleration in the advancement of treatments for COVID and vaccine development as well. In terms of the benefits for authors specifically, I'd say the biggest incentive really is the increase in impact that an open access article can have. The more people that can access an article, the more people that will read it and then benefit from it, and ultimately cite it as well, all of which then feeds back into the impact that the research has on the community and the wider world as well. What's also really important about research that's published open access rather than research that's made free to read is that gold open access content is also licensed under open access licenses. So you might have heard the term CC BY or CC BY NC. These licenses make it very clear to anyone who accesses and reads the research how and then in what way and in what context they can build upon it to further advance the field. There's a lot of detail and complexity in understanding open access licenses. So to your point, Stephen, on particular resources for researchers to learn more, I would recommend checking out the Creative Commons web pages. They do really a great job explaining open access licenses and the different types. And then more broadly, just in terms of learning about the benefits of open access, and particularly for authors, I would recommend looking at various publishers' open access pages. I know Springer Nature has a section devoted specifically to the benefits of open access, and we do as well on our Rural Study of Chemistry web pages. So yeah, I'd recommend checking all of those
out. Thank you very much for that broad perspective on the benefits of open access and those resources. Could I turn now to India in particular and Dr. Partha? How do you see open access publishing helping to accelerate the research ecosystem in India and for Indian researchers?
Now you can hear me. Yeah. I had to act absent-minded, you see, for a little long. Yeah. So, well, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. My answer to this is or may not be India specific. Some parts of it might be, because at the end of the day, creating knowledge follows similar pathways, and there can't be too much of a difference. So the way I look at a research ecosystem in its simplest form, and of course I don't have places to draw diagrams, is that, okay, you should be able to read good research, do good research, then publish good research. The interesting part is, so far the arrows are one way, but only if you publish good research can you read good research, because at the end of the day, what you read is what others publish. Now, so it's a kind of a loop structure. And if I look at open access, so any improvement in any of these three steps effectively improves the ecosystem. Now, if I look at this open access system, well, it improves access to good quality research for everybody, and therefore people would be able to read good research. That's perfect. But is that the whole story? If this open access comes with, let's say, article processing charges, which are often very large, and for most researchers, after I said yes to this panel, I kept reading articles, not magazine articles necessarily, some of them journal articles, as to how people have been reacting to this. Okay, for example, 2-3 years ago, this Plan S concept and so on and so forth. Now, if there is article processing charges, then you are creating a barrier, especially for places like India, where research funding is still not at the same levels as others. But others are. The articles I was referring to are primarily European. And therefore, that creates a problem. And since if you cannot publish good research, then you cannot read good research, as my initial feedback loop said. So that's an issue, and APC is an issue. The other I will quickly end is that who's going to pay for it? Now, I know there are these various consortiums getting there, and who's going to pay for these things? Well, it all looks good, but what if then tomorrow or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, they stop paying? So we have to be aware, and I am known to always look at these various sides of this. And if funding agencies are going to pay for it, let us say you build it into your funding requests, then unless the funding agencies increase their funding resources, effectively it is going to reduce the amount of money you spend on the research alone. And that would affect the middle rung. So I believe open access is noble. It is how it should be. I also understand that APC is necessary for journals to survive or publishers to work. The question is, we have to create a balance between these two things so that it does not pose another barrier to the weakly funded research countries versus the strongly funded research countries. So that's what I had to say for the moment.
Thank you, Dr. Partha. Well, you made some good points about funding and other aspects of the open access publishing. China has been making significant progress in that direction. Could I ask Dr. Shengley about the increasing number of gold open access articles by authors from China over the last few years, and what he thinks has been helpful in driving that?
Yeah, many thanks. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. The number of gold OA articles from Chinese authors has been vastly increased in the last few years. Yeah, and based on articles covered in Science Citation Index, as the so-called SCI, we can see that in the year of 2011, the total number of articles authored by Chinese researchers is about 160,000. And among these journals, among these articles, about 9% of them were published in OA journal. And while in the year of 2021, last year, the total number of China's SCI articles is about 661,000. Among them, the percentage of gold OA articles is 33%. If we include the green access papers, the percentage is about 40%. The 33% is just only gold OA articles. So from these numbers, we can see China's SSI articles increased 4 times from 2011 to 2021, while those published as gold OA increased 14 times, much higher than the total articles. So I think the driving force for the fast increasement of China's golden OA articles is mainly from the policy encouragement, government policy. In China, research management departments have long been paying much attention to open access and open science. For example, in the year of 2004, the National Science Foundation of China and the Chinese Academy of Sciences jointly signed the Berlin Declaration on Open Access. In the year of 2010, the Earth Berlin Conference on Open Access was held in Beijing. And in the year of 2014, the Conference of Global Research Council Summit. In this summit, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang clearly expressed support for establishing an open access mechanism for scientific knowledge funded by public finance. So the above-mentioned a series of the above-mentioned policies and activities make Chinese researchers aware that open access is important for their publishing and communication. And I think golden open access has many advantages, such as making research articles published faster, visibility higher, and access easier. So I think these are positive factors encouraging Chinese researchers to increasingly selecting open access publishing. And gold open access greatly promote research and communication for Chinese research. This is my views. Thanks.
Dr. Zhengli, thank you very much. That shows a dynamic and policy-driven but funder-supported approach in China. If we return now to India, could I ask Dr. Gopal, you play a pivotal role in implementing the new education policy of 2020 in the higher education space in Karnataka in India. I have a real problem with that word, clearly. How do you see research publishing changing under your new policy?
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I will touch upon the national education policy very briefly and then also tell you what we are attempting to do in my state. NEP 2020 envisions a comprehensive approach to transforming the quality and quantity of research in India. This includes promoting research in universities, the multidisciplinary nature of all higher education institutions, and emphasis on holistic education, inclusion of research and internships in undergraduate curriculum, faculty career management systems that give due weightage to research, and the governance and regulatory changes that encourage an environment of research and innovation. All of these aspects are extremely critical for developing a research mindset in the country. This is what our document, NEP 2020, speaks. It also talks about establishing National Research Foundation whose overarching goal is to enable a culture of research to permeate through our universities. In particular, NRF, the National Research Foundation, will provide a reliable base of merit-based but equitable peer-reviewed research funding, helping to develop a culture of research in the country through suitable incentives for and recognition of outstanding research. So keeping these things in mind, in the background, we have started implementing national education policy in our state from the last academic year. Please note here, this transformative change, it cannot happen overnight. It is a long-drawn process spreading more than a decade. At state level, there are efforts to create enabling environments in terms of governance and regulatory level changes, keeping the NEP aspirations in mind. Karnataka State Higher Education Bill is prepared and then given to government for enactment. Our state government has also constituted a committee to formulate R&D policy for the state. Please note here, Karnataka is one of the most progressive states in the country, and Bangalore is considered IT, capital of IT, BT, and nanosciences, or largest number of startups and unicorns in my country exist in one single city, Bangalore. So a separate body at state level for funding higher education institutions is also proposed. Ground realities and aspirations of NEP and government are considered while doing all these. Surely, this should strengthen the research and innovation ecosystem of the state and thereby research publishing. Thank you.
Dr. Gopal, thank you very much. That helps us to understand the approach of the policy in driving these changes. Could I come back to the overall publishing? And Sarah, ask you about the best practices you see in open access publishing, specifically gold open access, that you see in other countries that might be helpful to India to look at.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. And actually, to Dr. Chakraborty's earlier point, I'd say one of the biggest, if not the biggest challenge with open access is how it's paid for. So in the traditional subscription model, universities and sometimes individuals pay for access to content. But with open access, it is free for everyone to read, which of course is great. But it does mean that publishers have had to come up with new ways to generate revenue to cover the costs of the publishing operations, which even at their most basic require platforms, of course, and staff to coordinate and to host. And because the publishing isn't free, the money to support and maintain the quality and the integrity of scientific journals does need to come from somewhere. And of course, back to what Dr. Chakraborty was saying before, the most common way currently is for open access journals to generate revenue is through the author pay or the APC model. But one of the biggest limitations with the author pay model is that it is inherently inequitable, and it places the responsibility for payment of open access on the author, something which I do know is a particular challenge for authors in India. So in regions like Europe and in North America, funders, which primarily driven by Coalition S's Plan S, they've really taken a hard stance on open access and have mandated that authors publish open access. So because of this, we have seen both a significant uptake of open access publishing options, but also concurrently an emergence of new open access models to help to try to overcome the issues of the author pay model. And really, most importantly, the emphasis, as I view it, is on shifting the responsibility of payment for open access from the authors back to the institution and also potentially directly from the funders. And really to transition what used to be the subscription funds within the ecosystem into payments for open access. So there are quite a few different models that try to address this now, from institutional open access models that some of the pure OA publishers are signing, and of course the transitional read and publish models of hybrid publishers, to newer models like Subscribe to Open that literally take subscription fees and then convert those into open access fees. And I think in particular models like subscribe to open or institutional partnership type models could work well for India, and particularly in the context of the potential one nation, one subscription model, which I do think Dr. Chakraborty will be addressing next. So really, I think what's essentially for India, what will be really important in the next couple of years for Gold Open Access is for the funders, for the policymakers, publishers, and the institutions to work together really to figure out the best business models for open access that do remove the responsibility of payment from the author onto sort of more the institutional level. So thank you.
Thank you. That was very clear. We also have a question from the audience in relation to this, which is to the heart of what you were talking about. Can't we take the institutional funding that exists today and repurpose that into supporting open access? And as you say, sir, elsewhere in the world, transformative agreements, the read and publish deals are making a big impact on that fund. But Dr. Partha, in India, we're hearing about, as Sarah also said, the one nation, one subscription policy that might be got ready. Could you share your thoughts on whether this would be preferential to the transformative agreements that are working elsewhere? And if so, why? Or if not, what else do you think?
Thank you. See, again, I come back to these 3 steps. Read good research, do good research, publish good research. So one nation, one subscription, if the government wishes to fund it, brilliant idea, because it at least solves the problem of the barriers that may exist to the less resourceful for access to good research. So at least the first step, read good research, it will help resolve that problem. But the issue is this, that if this funding is in addition to the research fundings that is going on, that's good. If it cuts into the research funding, then effectively you are impacting the second stage, the ability of people to do good research, because now when they would get X amount of money for something that they wanted to do, they are going to effectively get 0.8x or 0.9x because some part of the funding is going elsewhere. But I support this initiative of one nation, one subscription, because it allows knowledge to be free. That's how it is meant to be. So in that sense, it's good. These transformative agreements that you asked me to compare it with, I am not aware with all of them. I live in a corner in my own world. Please understand that the one I know about is Plan S. And it came out of this coalition S with a capital O and a capital A. And I have read things for and against Plan S. And of course, Plan S has been modified many, many times. So I don't want to talk about Plan S. So these transformative agreements, as long as they reduce the barrier to reading good research and publishing good research, please understand, if people are unable to publish good research, people are unable to read good research. And if you are going to put barriers in some way for people to publish good research, then there will be discrepancies. Resourceful places will have more publications, less resourceful places would have less. And in all this discussion on funding, I feel who are being left out are people who don't need funding to do good research. Imagine the mathematicians trying to create proofs of certain open problems. Imagine physicists trying to resolve a problem. So all of them don't necessarily require, a lot of research funding, and they may be not therefore going in for research funding. They're focusing their entire energy on resolving these open problems. Where do they publish then? And so I keep coming back. I'm sorry to deviate from the question, and I know I have 3 minutes, 48 seconds. I thought Ms. Bossard took a little bit less time, so I'm borrowing from her. I believe One Nation, One Subscription is a good initiative. And I do believe that we have to look at models which do not require the authors to pay upfront to publish their articles. I'm sure the publishers are really working on it, and people who are knowledgeable on this, my co-panelists, I'm not, must be looking at variety of ways of doing things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's clear about where you stand on One Nation, One Subscription, and we'll see how that develops. I'd just add that putting perhaps into context the sums of money, that when you do the calculations, less than 1% of the research and development funding that exists today is currently spent on subscriptions and open access put together. So it's a ratio of 99 to 1 rather than 90 or 80 to percent. But it's nonetheless a challenge, clearly, and one that the audience, as well as all of us, are interested in solving. Could I turn back for a moment to China, because I think funding is necessary, but also actually how the publishing works. And Dr. Shengley, could you throw some light on how open access publishing for Chinese scientific journals is working, and how that compares with the international scientific journals, and what challenges you see the Chinese journals facing? If you give us a couple of brief comments on that, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. In China, I can see most of the gold OA articles are published in foreign journals. I just back to SCI. Yeah, according to the data based on SCI database, Chinese researchers published 2,600 gold OA articles in the year of 2021. That's the year. Yeah, we have more than 200,000 gold OA articles, and only about 5% of these OA papers are published in Chinese journals. The other 95% are published in abroad journals. So we could see that the landscape of open access publishing in China's scientific journal are much different from that of international scientific journals. And I think the big difference is determined by spatial operation model of China's journals. In China, all journals should be sponsored and published by state-owned institutions or organizations. And the nearly 5,000 scientific journals are scattered in more than 3,000 universities, research institutes, societies, and publishers. And more than 80 of these journals are not in commercial operation. That is, they can get financial support from their sponsors. These characteristics determine that most China's journals have not the burden to make money for market. Yeah. According to the China's journal database, CSCD, the China Science Citation Database, which is sponsored by Library of Chinese Academy of Sciences. CSCD covered 1,262 high-quality scientific journals, which accounting for about 25% of all China's scientific journals. Among the 1,200 CSCD covered journals, 83% of them were made full text, free of charge. Articles are made free to read on the publisher's website, without payment of ABC. This kind of journal is referred as Burns Open Access Journal. We can see Burns Open Access is a major characteristic of China's scientific journals. I think the biggest challenges faced by China's scientific journal is how to adopt standard gold open access publishing model, including standard copyright transfer, maintaining the integrity and quality of published articles.
Shenbi, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I have one sentence. Sorry. Okay. So, I wanted to talk about the challenges. So, the other challenges is for open access publishing in China is predatory publisher or predatory journals. Is often a challenge for authors to determine whether they are dealing with predatory publishers. Some Chinese universities and research institutions have set up their own journal blacklist for the purpose to help researchers to avoiding making money in journals. So the two challenges. One is for journals, the other is for authors. Thank you.
Henry, thank you. You make a very good point about the risk of predatory publishers. They have tainted at times the transition to open access. And I think it's on particularly the publishing industry to self-regulate and to make sure that its membership organisations do the appropriate vetting. We have, I think, both at STM Association and at OASFA taken a strong line on that, and it's something that with the Chinese authorities and Indian authorities and others around the world, we need to make sure that researchers are not made vulnerable to such organisations. Could I return though for a moment to India then, and the policies that are really do drive and shape the transition to open access and what's possible for researchers. So Dr. Gopal, could I finish the panel session by asking you to share your view about how policymakers in your region perceive open access model, and whether there's any pointers you would like to give us as publishers about how to better serve your region?
It is a very tough question. I'm afraid to speak on behalf of the community. It's very hard. But however, when it comes to publication, the important factors that bother us are quality, integrity, access, and affordability. Look at all these in the context of research lifecycle activities. How do we make quality publications available to all at affordable cost? How do we make publishing in quality publications affordable and fast to authors? These are two questions that we need to address. We also need to consider the quantity in proportion to population of our country. I'm talking in the context of my country. We also need to consider quantity in proportion to population of our country. How do we help large number of state public universities to enrich their research ecosystems? In my country, we have institutes of national importance, and then we have large, they are very small in number, doing high impact work. But then we have large number of state public universities, which cater to almost more than 80% of the population in higher education. Is gold open access a kind of making publication sustainable? Or we should continue to patronage research, including research publication, and thereby free access is a question. Sustainability is by taking away external inputs, but can we afford to do that? It is closely connected to APC. Gold open access has been trend now. We see innovations in terms of volunteering and professional contributions aspects towards making publishing and access affordable. We need to learn from best practices and make suitable governance, regulatory and financial provisions towards this transition. And my state is working towards all this. Thank you.
Dr. Gopal, thank you. That's all of us working together towards this is perhaps the sentiment that we can finish the panel session with today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We could be talking about this for the rest of the day. I'd like, though, to, before we finish, just to thank all of my panelists, to Sarah, Partha, Shengli, and Gopal for their insights today and contributions. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts and, as I say, insights to help guide us going forward. I'm now going to hand back to Jajit, who will prepare us for the next session. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for everyone online joining us today.